of their land to the government. Mitigation banks is another way, and habitat conservation planning. So support for this initiative so far, the Conservation Alliance has supported it. Certainly our Audubon chapter has, and the Martin County chapter of the Florida Native Plant Society has as well. Hopefully, if they hear this from enough different entities, we'll be successful in them reevaluating the boundary of that project. Next project I'm going to talk about here is a specific bird conservation initiative that Audubon is involved with and has been actually for a number of years. I've got this slide showing all the different terns that we have in Martin County at one time or another. Very similar from outward characteristics, but the two we're going to focus on here are the least tern and the black skimmer, because these are species that specifically need some help from us. Most of you will know the black skimmer, a real pretty bird with its long bottom bill and shorter top bill as it just flies right across the water surface trying to snap up those little fish. The other one that is really the focus of this project is the least tern. Small little guy, only 7 or 8 inches in length, and we lost that range map somehow. Okay. There we go. This is one of those migratory birds, goes tens of thousands of miles every year from wintering areas down in northern South America, not only to Florida, but all the way up the east coast to Maine. There's a central United States breeding population, and then as you see, there's some in California as well. When we talk about these birds nesting, they don't really create a nest. It's just a little scrape in the sand. They lay their eggs right on the barren sand of the beach. They have returned to our area within about the last 3 weeks or maybe a month or so ago, and many of them will stay here and nest. So what you see, the picture here, is 2 of the adults, and for this particular species you cannot tell male from female. But think about a bird that's nesting on the open sandy beach in Florida in June and July. Throw out the whole mental picture that you have of a bird incubating eggs. They're not doing that. They're actually trying to keep the eggs and the little chick there from cooking in the midday heat. There's one bringing in a fish, an adult bird bringing in a small fish. These birds are very pointy-winged and pointy-tailed and all that. The only thing that they eat is live fish. So we see them out there generally in the nearshore waters of the ocean and in the Indian River Lagoon as well. Our Audubon chapter has been involved with least tern conservation certainly for even decades before I was involved. I dug up this picture, our news article from the Stewart News in 1959. Our Audubon chapter was an advocate for least terns, and I'm afraid to say we're still fighting that battle, and unfortunately it's a battle that we are losing. Luckily, we've been able to see that, as you see from the picture on the right, that the birds have been a little bit adaptable. If we didn't have their adaptability to going on to nesting on rooftops, probably this species of bird would be in a lot worse shape than it is, which its current status is threatened. So from over 200 miles from Brevard County down to the Keys, there's the only place that the birds are still nesting on the beach is here in Martin County. And we'll show you those 2 areas. Here's an aerial photo from Sailfish Point, southern Hutchinson Island there at the top of the picture, and parts of Jupiter Island as well. The 2 locations that the birds are nesting are, first off, a small area at Peck's Lake. The location, the very narrow area of Jupiter Island where so many of the boaters come up and walk across to the ocean side. The birds have nested there, or attempted to nest there the last couple of years, although unfortunately last year they were not successful. The second area is up there at the very southern tip of Hutchinson Island. The birds did nest there in fairly good numbers last year. Our Audubon chapter is helping out with this, working with the National Wildlife Refuge, first off, to host the area at Hotel National Wildlife Refuge where the birds are nesting. with unfortunately the biggest problem being disturbance, whether intentional or unintentional, human-related disturbance. Whether it's people coming in and flushing the birds off of their nest, or the bigger problem is uncontrolled dogs on the beach. You get a dog chasing the birds for fun, it leaves the shading of that egg for as little as 10 minutes, and those eggs are going to cook and the nesting attempt will be unsuccessful. And these are birds that have one nesting cycle per year. So that's down here at Hopestown National Wildlife Refuge. The picture up here at the top is the sand spit on the southern tip of the island. And we've got a challenge there as well. Where the birds have chosen to nest is directly in the area of the federal navigation project. So our challenge in the big picture is no, we cannot put all of our eggs in one basket and protect that area that the birds have nested, because it's extremely unlikely that the federal navigation project is going to be at all impacted by the presence of our birds. Other potential least turn nesting areas, there are some possible areas in the vicinity of the inlet. The big sandbar, absent people, that's where the birds would go. But as many of you know, this is the situation on that sandbar in the summertime, and gets even worse. Sometimes you can't even see that there's an island there just because of the use. We've talked with some of the permitting agencies, and there's no way they tell us. In fact, I've been told some of the people will lose their jobs if we were to propose any sort of preserving that area, even for the short period of generally May, June to part of July during the nesting season. So it's a big challenge for us. Where I'm going to ask all of you to help us out is in helping us identify rooftop nesting areas for the least terns. I mentioned that they are adaptable enough to nesting on rooftops. Here are the historic sites that we have had, generally in the Martin County area, up in Jensen Beach, one area in Palm City, and a couple here in generally the eastern Martin County area. Again, all locations that are close enough to the water that the birds can easily go out to the lagoon, catch their fish, and bring them back to the youngsters on the rooftop. The birds will generally, that they've returned recently, they will be courting for the next couple weeks or so. By the 4th of July, the nesting will be over and the birds will then be heading south. So all of you come from different parts of the county. We'd like you to indeed be on the lookout and hear for these birds during the next couple weeks or so. We've got one of our Audubon members, Bev Popke, who has agreed to be our sort of liaison for all least turn things in the county. So if you see these little birds, and most of the time that they will let you know of their presence, and unfortunately some of the owners of the buildings where the least terns are nesting don't like the birds there because they will dive bomb on the patrons of the building. And they do a little bit of their droppings on your head, the whole works. So we're trying to work with those owners to say, you know, just be patient. It's going to be a relatively short nesting season. The reason that we're so interested in all this is, unfortunately, the tar and gravel rooftop of those buildings is kind of an archaic system. The roofers tell us that within 20 to 30 years, all those old rooftops are going to be replaced with some new and modern system. And so, although we want to keep having the birds come back, because they do tend to come back to the same nesting area year after year after year, if they've been successful, our goal has to be two-pronged. Try to keep some of these rooftop nesting, but very definitely work with the residents at Sailfish Point and the folks at the Hopestown National Wildlife Refuge to try to keep those beach nesting places in place. So that's it for my presentation. Thank you. It sounds like we're going to hold questions until after the last. Is that right, Donna?
It's up to you. I mean, if you have time to stay, that'd be great.
I do. We can do it either way.
That'd be fun.
Okay.
Does anybody have a real quick question